Your imagination is a crazy thing. You don't understand, Pop. This was a phrase that I used all the time growing up to my pops, but I never thought it would be turned on me. Well, it wouldn't be a surprise to you because I have a 16-year-old daughter. Her name is McKenna. She's absolutely phenomenal. And if you are listening and watching, first of all, thank you so much, McKenna. But I want to tell you how proud I am of you and how unbelievably talented you are, and that you're an absolute superstar and you can accomplish anything that you put your mind to. But just because you can do it doesn't make it your purpose. Well, on the way back from Park City the other day, we were talking, and she was telling me about, theater and drama. And, she was saying that she wanted to stretch herself, and she was getting a little bit bored, and she said she would like to try out comedy. And I said, well, why don't you do a comedy scene? Try out for it. She said, you don't understand. You don't understand how it works. The teacher has certain favorites, and she wants them to play in certain roles, and she doesn't see certain people as different kind of actors. And she was kind of frustrated thinking that she was kind of being pigeonholed. I said, well, why don't we just imagine for a second that there wasn't any option of you not getting the part? What would you be willing to do? And she was like, no, you don't understand. And as opposed to doing the right thing, which is being a parent and listening and asking questions and drawing it out of them, I went old school on her and I just interrupted her and I was like, hey, and I knew I had to take a little bit different approach. And the reason why I did is because both my parents had taught me, my mom and my pop, that anything was possible. And they didn't only suggest it, they demanded that in myself and my brothers in our lives. And so I said to her, imagine if your dad, me, was taken hostage. And the people who took me hostage called you and said, we're not going to release him unless you get the part in the comedy scene. What would you be willing to do? And her face went from like a shock and concern to the expression of determination and focus. And then she answered me quickly and she said, anything. I'd be willing to do anything. And see, most of the time our imagination can really shift our reality and help us to push through circumstances that otherwise would seem impossible. And in Proverbs 25, it encourages us to imagine what it would be like to put our trust fully in God. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Imagine if it took you 3 times to be able to get something right. Would you be willing to push through those 3 times? Well, when we were going to record the podcast, I went through first one, the mic was off, second one, the sound wasn't working, and now I'm here with you. But imagine what it would be like. And when we take ourselves into an imaginary scenario, a lot of times it can circumvent us having to actually go through those things. We used to call it playing house. And when I would say this to people inside of our company, I would say, just play house here. Imagine if you had all of the business that you ever wanted. Imagine if you didn't have all the business that you wanted. What would you be willing to do? What would you put in place if all the things were going right? What would you put in place if all the things were going wrong? Imagine. And see, your imagination doesn't cost you anything, but it can bring a crazy, incredible return. And my mom and pops were huge on this, and I pushed my daughter the other day, and I saw something switch in her. And I realized that I wanted to encourage her imagination as much as humanly possible. And, when I talk with people, I got a chance to, get a text message from my friend Stacy the other day. Big shout out, Stacy, if you're listening. I think you are, because she's a huge, supporter of the podcast. She was just talking about that there was almost mechanical relationship with God. And then there was the side where she really started to have like a personal relationship. And she was talking about this and how those things switched. Well, imagine, or, take ourselves into our imaginary part. When I say play house, you're playing with house money when you're in your imagination. There's no bad thing to it. But imagination does take encouragement. We've got to be encouraged by people who we value, and that will get us to start to imagine things. Once that imagination comes into play, we need to have people around us that will celebrate those ideas. And once they celebrate those ideas, we start to innovate. When we innovate, then we start to work towards it. We start to see some results, and then we got to adapt immediately within it. And it's incredible. So I encourage you today, imagine your greatest possible scenario. Imagine the worst possible scenario. And then ask yourself, what would you do in those areas? Well, a lot of people that I've talked to have said, like, I trust God, but I trust him in certain areas. And imagine what it would be like if we trusted God fully. I mean, he blesses us. I've had so many amazing stories throughout my life of God just stepping in, from the fact of, whether it be in business and family and all those things. But imagine if we trusted in him fully. And so that's what he asked us to do in Proverbs 25 today. And in verse 1-3, that he said that it's not that deep. This kind of comes from my wife. These words are from my wife. Like, whenever I go through something and I'm like just trying to, be philosophical about it or whatever. And my wife is just so gangster. Brooklyn, I love you. You're amazing. You're beautiful. You're intelligent. You work hard. You have patience. You have persistence. You have, you're just an absolute genius at what you do and in our family. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. But when I go to her and I tell her, and I try to get philosophical, she'll be like, it's not that deep. And I'll be like, no, but you don't understand. I'm going through this. I'm going through that. And she's like, how does it feel? Well, it doesn't feel that good. Then stop doing it. That's what she'll do. She's just so matter of fact. She's just like, it's not that deep. It's a pretty simple thing. If you move your elbow and it hurts, then stop moving your elbow in that way, or go do something to fix it. But quit crying about it. And she's just so matter of fact with it. And in verse 1-3, that's how God was talking, is like, it's not that deep. God loves you and wants to hang out with you. That's it. Like, he just loves you and wants to hang out with you. And when he hangs out with you, then he'll give you wisdom. And you'll gain wisdom. You'll understand what the right thing is to do at the right time, because you know what? You'll be in communication with him. It's not that deep. He just loves you and he wants to hang out. I've never heard it that way, but in Proverbs 25, 1-3, it just hit me like a ton of bricks this morning. But also too, I heard my wife's voice in the simplicity of the relationship. He just loves you. He wants to hang out with you. It's not that deep. In verse 4 and 5, remove the silliness and wisdom will remain. I keep hearing my mom's voice in this stuff. When my mom is talking about like being silly, she used to say this all the time. Don't be silly. Just don't make silly decisions. Silly people say silly things and then silly things happen. So don't be silly. But if you remove the silliness, the wisdom will remain. The way to remove silliness is to add intense heat. When you add intense heat to something, the impurities will go away, and silliness is an impurity. Wisdom is a purity. So remove the silliness and wisdom will remain. In verse 6-7, silly people self-promote, the wise celebrate others, right? Imagine this. Oh, I'm the greatest. I'm the best in the world. I'm the greatest in the world. When you turn it around and say, hey, that's the best person in the world, every single one of you, third-party credibility could change your life. It really could. I mean, I think about it with myself on our trip back from Park City. I was listening to Joe Rogan. And I was like, man, he's the GOAT, right? With podcasting and everything like that. And I was thinking, man, what would it be like, number one, to be on Joe Rogan podcast, which we'll go back to this when I am, because it'll happen at some point. He's not my friend yet, but you know what I mean? We'll work at it. I'll give him the opportunity every single day to be my friend. But imagine that would change things. If Joe Rogan was to say, hey, Kelly Cardenas is doing great things, check out The Vibe with Kelly Cardenas, the podcast, that could change like that. Just like back in the day, Oprah changed my friend Tim Story's life. He said she sprinkled Oprah dust on him. He was on the show. He's one of her favorites, Super Soul Sunday, and his life, the trajectory changed. But imagine we have that power every single day to be able to speak life about other people and to be able to promote other people, give them third-party credibility, because that's the thing that all of us are waiting for also. And in verse 6 through 7, it talks about it. 3,000 years ago, it talked about it. Silly people self-promote, but wise people celebrate others. Celebrate somebody today. Cardenas Law Group, the #1 law group in all of Las Vegas. Personal injury. I tell you, if you're not working with Cardenas Law Group, you're missing out, because the integrity, the character, and the team that's wrapped around. That's the reason why they don't have to they don't have to advertise on billboards, because everybody's talking about them, because they continue to do the right thing for the right reasons, and the right things keep turning out. But that's third-party credibility. Promote other people. James Dixon, check him out. #1 motivational speaker in the world. I tell you, if you look into Paul Long, if you haven't had him at your conference, one of the baddest speakers, keynote speakers on the planet. This dude is unreal. Third-party credibility can change your life, but you could change somebody's life by using it. In verse 8 through 10, mind your business, guard your heart, watch your mouth, and act according to your greatness. I'll say it again. Mind your business. I used to hear that when I was in school. Mind your business. Mind your business. Guard your heart. My mom would always say that. Watch your mouth and act according to your greatness. That's verse 8 through 10. Man, those are bombs right there. In verse 11 through 14, wise words make sense and silly ones don't. So choose wisely, right? It makes it so simple. It's not that deep. He wants to love you and just hang out with you. That's it, right? But we have to take ourselves into our imagination to make that a reality. And I encourage your imagination today. Imagine if you just trusted in God fully today. Just one day, just 24 hours. Hell, just even 1 hour. Just 1 hour. 1 minute. Right? In verse 15, patience and speaking life are powerful beyond measure. Patience. I had to have patience today. We went to record this episode, and the first two times, honestly, it was garbage. The sound was bad. The mics were off, all those things. But patience and then speaking life. And how can you speak life into other people? Happy Life Wood. Steve Thompson, one of the most amazing artists that you can ever imagine. He makes Jordan shoes, 3D Jordan shoes out of all different colors of wood with no stain. You have to check him out. It's incredible. I want to speak life to him. I want to speak life to Coach Gary. Coach Gary, Gary Gurian. I've been coaching with him, and the guy is unbelievable. His mind, he gave me some plays last night. He was like, hey, the defense is doing this. You should call this play. And we did it, and we scored. Coach Rich, that coaches with me. This guy is unbelievable. Also, Coach Rich McCarthy. I love you, man. I mean, he is the most patient guy and just super chill. But most people don't know how bad of a man that is. Special Forces, the guy is incredible. He lives in my neighborhood, and we get to hang out, and he's just an incredible human being. Speak life to people. My big brother, Rob, you have no idea. I love you so much, man. I mean, the text that I got the other day about the Titans and the Raiders next year, Maddox and I going, that made my world, man. I appreciate you. I love you, and you're the best. Speak life and be patient with people. I tell you, it's powerful beyond measure. In verse 16 and 17, more is not always better. In verse 18 through 20, 23, and 24, silliness is to rely on the unreliable. Again, it's not that deep. This stuff is very, very simple, right? But we have to imagine, just imagine, if you just sat and thought about it, you went into your imagination and you were like, oh, wow, should I rely on unreliable people? Just imagine for a second, but sometimes we're moving so fast that we don't slow down enough to be able to think about the simplicity of God's love in our life. Use your imagination today. In verse 21 through 22, let God do it. He does it better. That's a blanket statement, but it works in every aspect of life. Let God do it. He does it better. Revenge. Let God do it. He does it better. Blessing. Let God do it. He does it better, right? Seeking wisdom. Seeking answers. Let God do it. Let God bring the answer. He does it better. In verse 25, God refreshes the weary. If you're weary right now at the end of the month, well, a lot of times I say that the reckoning comes on the first of the month, right? Well, me and my wife joke about this. But sometimes on the 25th, you're a little bit weary. You're going through stuff. You're going through stuff in the month, and it's like, oh, wow, the first of the month is going to hit, and then it's going to be a brand new. Or you got to December, and you were like, man, January is just about to hit. It's a new year, new me, all this stuff. But I want to tell you that every single day, every moment of this day, every second, God refreshes the weary. And if you're weary, he'll refresh you. It's just that simple. He just wants to love you. He wants to hang out with you. It's not that deep, right? In verse 26 of Proverbs 25, it talked about oil and water don't mix. And this was the thing with my pops. He would always say, boy, oil and water don't mix. Put them in a little jar. You can shake them up as much as you want. And it'll look like they're mixing, but then they'll settle back. Oil and water don't mix. He said the world and God, they don't mix. Worldly wisdom, godly wisdom, they don't mix. Wisdom and silliness, they don't mix. You can shake them up. You can make sure like when they're in motion and when they're busy and all those things, they'll look like they do. But once everything slows down and settles, guess what happens? They separate. And when you separate silliness from wisdom, that's when you really start cooking, right? On verse 27, as we finish up, again, it reiterates, it's not that deep. He loves you and wants you to win. He wants you to win, but that takes you spending time with him. That's it. That's all he wants. And so in verse 28, wisdom or silliness, it's always your choice. It's kind of cool because I hear my mama and my pops' voice so much when I read through Proverbs, and then God just starts to apply it to my life. And what I want to invite you to do, read it. Like read Proverbs. At first you're going to read through, but then allow it to read you. Spend some time. Allow it to speak to you, but allow it to read you. It'll be like a mirror that way. See, McKenna's mind on that trip was limited to her experiences until she was given the freedom to imagine. I learned this freedom from my mama and pop through encouragement to seek the one who has the answers to the questions that we haven't even asked yet. God's love is simple and easily digestible. When we free our imagination by spending time with him, it's not that deep. He loves you, and he just wants to hang out with you. Today, I encourage you to imagine. Imagine what it would be like if your relationships were exactly the way that you wanted them to be. Imagine if that employee that you're having a big challenge with on your team, imagine if they were just gone. And some of you are like, well, that would just make it great. But imagine all the things that you would lose also. Play with house money. Go to your imagination. Encourage your imagination in so many different aspects, in the positive sides and the negative sides. Use your imagination. Walk yourself through the scenarios, because I guarantee you it'll cost you a lot less than having to go through those things. But to be able to break the barriers in your mind, free yourself into that imagination. And most of the time, our imagination, the way it gets freed is through encouragement. And I want to encourage every one of you right now that you're exactly where you need to be at the exact right time. And God's big enough. If he needed you someplace else, he would have you in that spot. I encourage you to realize that you are the greatest and to act according to that greatness today and walk in that every single moment of the day. Speak life into people. Talk about the things that they're doing. Promote people. Celebrate the things that they're doing, but make sure it's very specific, because if not, it has absolutely no value. This has been Proverbs 25, another episode of Inchstones. If you want to experience the Vibe live, the Vibe experience is April 12th. It's in Edison House in Salt Lake City. There's a limited amount of tickets. There's only 60 tickets. They're going quick, but I tell you, it is going to be unreal. You're going to have Baron Baptiste, one of the most amazing entrepreneurs on the planet, Coach Keith Hale, James Dixon, the #1 motivational speaker in the world. You're going to have marketing with Peter Anthony. You're going to have the Vibe with myself. And then we're going to do that from 9 to 3:30. And then later that night, then we have the Vibe Room. And I'm not telling you who I'm interviewing there, but it's a live version of the podcast. We got music involved. It is unreal day. And it's something that you do not want to miss. If you do want to get a ticket complimentary to it, go to our Substack and you could just become a founder. And when you become a founding member of our Substack, the first 10, then you will get a ticket to the Vibe experience complimentary. So my name is Kelly Cardenas. It's been a pleasure. Jimmy Barbour, I absolutely love you. I went over 1 minute and 20 seconds, but I hope you still love me. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.